let's talk about the Detroit Lions on the J Sports YouTube page. Detroit Lions News Podcast here on the J Sports YouTube page. You'll get it all here on this YouTube page. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions because I like doing combine videos after the combine. I love talking about prospects and all that jazz. I think it's very intriguing, and especially when we get to this time of year. But usually it's free agency talk and trade talk and all that stuff before we get to the new league year. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I think it's good for the Detroit Lions because it's someone that they could potentially take who's a top 10 talent. James Pierce, who is a Tennessee Volunteers edge rusher, is he ran the fastest 40 time. That it's one of the fastest 40 times I've ever seen. He ran a faster 40 time than Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, CD Lamb, and Amon St. Brown at 4.47. Pierce is a 6'5", 245-pound guy. He's a huge guy. He's a top 10 talent. And when we talk about James Pierce, it's someone that I'm privy to because I am a Tennessee Volunteer fan. I watch a ton of James Pierce. And when we talk about James Pierce and what he's able to do as an edge rusher, it's phenomenal. I thought he had a really bad year this year. I don't know if I buy some of the stuff that's been talking about, but if he is there when the Detroit Lions pick, because when I read this to you from Walter Football, this is a report from Walter Football, you're going to say, I don't think so. But let me just coax you into why I think the Detroit Lions should take a chance on a guy like James Pierce if he gets to pick 28. Now let's read from Walter Football. I was told by one scout that Pierce Jr. is seen as a player with the worst character report of any player in this draft class. Another scout told me they think the environment and people around him in Tennessee are the main issues. They think that he could become a pro when he enters an NFL building. I was left with a final note. While the general public would be stunned to see this happen, NFL personnel wouldn't be shocked to see him on the board after the first 64 picks in the draft. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's kind of foolish because we have seen other players with bigger question marks, bigger character flags be, they drop a little bit, but then the team picks them up. And, a lot of Lions fans, they always want to stick to let's get the good guy, right? Let's get the good guy. If James Pierce does fall to the Detroit Lions, can I make the case that if there's one thing that I think that could be potentially true, it's the second line where it says another scout told me they think the environment, people around him in Tennessee are the main issues, and they think he can become a pro when he enters an NFL building. Let me just play this in your mind, okay? When you come to Detroit and you come to that defense, you come with Alex Anzalone, who's a great leader. You come to, Aiden Hutchinson, DJ Reader, Ali McNeil. And then when you go against a guy like Taylor Decker or Penei Sewell in practice, you're going to get humbled really, really quick. And I do buy that people around him and the Tennessee environment could have been the culprit for why he wasn't as great as he should have been last year. And to be honest, it looked like he checked out at some points because Tennessee it seemed like something was off last year with Tennessee, especially after I think week 7 or something. They just seemed like a totally different team. And it seemed like James Pierce was one of them, but there was also other players on the team that looked like they were checked out. Maybe it was a coaching issue, whatever the case may be. But obviously Walter Football is reporting that there's character flags, and I don't care. Let me just put it to you this way: if James Pierce was a drop to the Detroit Lions at 28, or he drops past 28, he goes. I think the Eagles will pick him up. I think the Chiefs would pick him up. I think the Commanders would pick him up. You got to understand this. When you come into the building of a good team, like the Detroit Lions, where the coach is well aware of the situation, he can handle it. We handled CD Deuce and CJ Gardner Johnson for a year, but I buy the second line the most. I'll tell you why. When I watched James Pierce last year, it seemed like times he would turn it on, and there would be no one better than James Pierce. Just the reality. You watch him, and you're going, wow, this guy's a top 10 pick, no doubt in my mind. Then you watch him sometimes, and you go, he could have made that tackle right there, But unfortunately, it didn't look like he was. Um, he didn't have his. You could even make the case of what it was. You could say he quit or something like that. But I saw that with the Tennessee football team in conjunction. Like we watched him against Ohio State. I know Ohio State is the national title champion. It just seemed like they quit. After they fell down 14 nothing, they fell down quickly. They quit. And it seemed like this was a constant thing with the Tennessee Volunteers last year. Heupel is a good coach. I question his leadership capabilities as a coach because it seemed like they just fell by the wayside. And this is the second year in a row they did. Can I blame it on James Pierce alone? Not really. But I do buy the second line of what Walter Football was talking about, where it could be the environment at Tennessee, because I think it could have been the environment at Tennessee. Watching that team as much as I have, I'm watching Tennessee and I'm seeing the same things that I'm seeing from James Pierce. And I know there was probably a Tennessee coach that said that he quit on him or something like that. Tennessee has a little bit of there's something going on down there. They have a lot of talent down there, and they still can't get it together for an SEC football program. It's kind of a sad state of affairs because they should have been way better, especially with the quarterback that they have, the defensive end that they had. It seemed like they just fell apart, and I blame that on the leadership of the coaching and the leadership of the locker room. But James Pierce coming to Detroit at pick 28. If he came to Detroit or he came to Philadelphia or he came to Kansas City, the same would be said in all those locker rooms. You can't really push Andy Reid around. You really can't push Dan Campbell around. And Nick Sirianni, for as big as a goofball as he is, those guys play for him. Jalen Carter, Jacoby Dean, Jordan Davis, they all had character red flags. And Nick Sirianni can rein them in because they got the veterans on that team that could rein them in. And that there's a when you walk into the building in Philadelphia, in Kansas City, you know what is expected of you every single given day. And when I look at the Detroit Lions, yes, maybe James Pierce does have a character flaw, but if he gets to 28, there's no way you could just say, I'm not taking him. I'm not taking him. If you can't get Myles Garrett, and all reports, Kimberly Martin today reported that Myles Garrett was was one of the main targets for Brad Holmes at the trade deadline, and they've been talking ever since. If you can't get Myles Garrett, and there's a chance that you can get a guy like James Pierce, and people might be scared off about the character flags, and they might not draft him because they say he has, whatever the case may be. You could read it again. Worst character report of any player in the class. Another scout said the environment. And then one other note was that NFL personnel wouldn't be shocked to see him on the board after this for 64 picks. I think it's all a chess game. Someone's trying to get this guy to drop. Could it be the Eagles? Probably. Could it be the Lions? Probably. Could it be the Chiefs? Probably. Any team in the bottom 20 after pick 20, I'm sure they're like, come here. Come here. You can come here. Because when you get a guy like that and you bring him into a locker room that is very, very, like, Lions fans know the culture is real. Dan Campbell has established a culture in Detroit that if you were to bring a bad apple in there, like James Pierce, who might not be a bad apple, he might just be around the wrong crowd. And you bring him into the Detroit locker room, he learns off of Aiden Hutchinson working. He learns off St. Brown working. He learns about getting humbled by Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker in practice. I mean, those are things that could really help this young kid. So if he were to drop to 28, would I take the chance on James Pierce? Absolutely. When you talk about a guy like that who's a top 10 talent, who ran one of the fastest 40 times in the entire faster than all these guys, Derrick Henry, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Christian McCaffrey. And then you look at his statistics last year, he's 7.5 sacks, 23 tackles. He had a forced fumble. He was really, really good last year with the Tennessee Volunteers. Ultimately, I just thought the Tennessee Volunteers as a team had a little bit of issues finishing games. And I don't blame that on James Pierce. I think the environment and him being so close to home kind of hurt him. And I think him being a North Carolina kid, and getting away from North Carolina and in that, Appalachia states, I think this would be good for him to come to Detroit, to come to Philadelphia, to go to Kansas City, one of those teams, because I think those are three teams that have the coaching, they have the leadership, and they have the players to keep him in line. When a young rookie comes in here, it could flame out. There's no doubt about it. It could flame out. But every player wants to get their second contract. And I look at a guy like James Pierce, even if you have him for just 5 years because of the player option, it's a win. And if it gets you a Super Bowl championship because of what he can bring on the football field, it's a win. So if I'm the Detroit Lions, if he does fall to me, I would definitely take James Pierce with open arms and bring him into the locker room and show him what being an NFL pro is all about, because you got NFL pros on that coaching staff, including Kelvin Shepard, who is a pros pro, who's going to, give him a little bit of tough love. You got Dan Campbell. There's a lot of leaders in that locker room that can help him along in how to become a real pro. And I don't think he got that at Tennessee football. I don't think Tennessee really gave him the opportunity to do that. There's a difference between Tennessee football and Georgia football and Alabama football. And the difference is the locker room, the culture, what is expected. And I think that's a major reason why these people are flagging James Pierce, because of where he came from. And this is kind of a black eye on Heupel, to be honest, because he couldn't get these guys. I've seen him multiple times last year. Like I said, it wasn't just James Pierce that was not playing up to the level that he's expected to play at. So we'll see what happens in the draft. But if this guy does fall to the Detroit Lions, I would take him with an open breath. So let me know what you would think. Would you bring this guy into the locker room? Do you think he would fit in this locker room? Do you think that the pros in this locker room could get him to become an NFL pro? Like the report said, maybe it's just the environment. I think it's the environment that he's in, but we'll see what happens in the not so distant future as the NFL draft is slowly coming along with us. But we got the free agency class coming up, free agency and trades and all that jazz before we get to the big show of the NFL draft. We'll see you guys in the next video as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on the J Sports YouTube page. I'm your host, Joe Chap. We'll see you in the next video.